Welcome back to Graveyard Dance. This week, we have a story that's pretty dark. It's all about the dangers of cult life and what can happen if you happen to follow the wrong fruitcake, cult leader. Before we head that way though, let us tell you about a shop that I really love called Steam Engine Sales. If you're looking for a comical t-shirt, hat, hoodie, or a coffee mug, this is your place. That have inspirational stuff, funny stuff, and all kinds of other stuff. You can find the banner to their store right on our website at graveyarddance.com. If you're not comfy yet, let's all get that way. If you're hungry or thirsty, go on and get your goodies. We'll wait. Snuggle up to your special someone, and if you don't have a special someone, don't worry. We got you, boo. Just head over to izofadog.com and adopt a pet. If you want a dog or a cat, no matter where you are as long as you're here in the States, they will have what you're looking for at one of these great shelters or rescues. Now, let's move on to today's story. The story of Jonestown is one of the most haunting tragedies in modern history. In 1978, over 900 men, women, and children perished in the jungles of Guyana, victims of a mass suicide orchestrated by their leader, Jim Jones. To understand how this happened, we need to start at the very beginning, tracing the life of Jim Jones and the rise of his People's Temple, which began as a movement of hope and ended in one of the most horrific acts of mass death ever recorded. Jim Jones was born on May 13, 1931, in Crete, Indiana. His father, James Thurman Jones, was a disabled World War I veteran who struggled to provide for the family. His mother, Lynetta, was a fiercely independent woman with an eccentric personality. Growing up in poverty during the Great Depression, young Jim faced bullying and isolation, and his odd behavior made him stand out even more. From a young age, Jim had a strange obsession with religion and death. He would hold mock funeral services for dead animals and deliver fiery sermons, mimicking preachers he admired. His neighbors thought of him as peculiar but charismatic, even as a child. Jim's fascination with religion and his ability to captivate an audience were the seeds of what would later make him so dangerous. In addition to religion, Jim was drawn to powerful political ideologies. He read extensively about socialism, communism, and figures like Stalin and Gandhi. While Gandhi's philosophy of nonviolence inspired him, he also admired Stalin's control over people. This mix of compassion and domination shaped his worldview. As he grew older, Jim felt a calling to use religion as a tool for social change. In the racially segregated 1950s, he was deeply disturbed by inequality and racism. He dreamed of a society where everyone was treated equally, regardless of race, class, or gender. These ideas would later attract many followers. In the mid-1950s, Jim Jones founded the People's Temple in Indianapolis. At first, it was just a small congregation, but it quickly grew. Jim was a magnetic speaker. His sermons were a mix of Christian teachings, socialist ideals, and promises of racial harmony. People who felt marginalized found hope in his words. Jim made integration one of the central missions of the People's Temple. At a time when segregation was deeply entrenched, his church welcomed people of all races. He even adopted several children of different ethnicities, calling his family a rainbow family. To many, he seemed like a true champion of equality. One of Jim's most effective tools for gaining followers was his claim to perform miracles. During church services, he would heal people of illnesses and disabilities. These dramatic performances convinced many that Jim had divine powers. Later, it was revealed that many of these miracles were staged, but by then, people were already deeply loyal to him. In the 1960s, Jim moved the People's Temple to California, where progressive ideas were more accepted. The temple established branches in Los Angeles, San Francisco, and other cities. Jim became increasingly influential, aligning himself with prominent politicians and civil rights leaders. As the People's Temple grew, so did Jim's paranoia. He started to believe that the government and powerful elites were plotting against him. He preached that the world was on the brink of nuclear war and that his followers needed to prepare for the end times. In the early 1970s, Jim began searching for a place to build his utopia, a self-sufficient community free from oppression. He settled on Guyana, a small South American country with a socialist government. The remote location offered the perfect setting for his vision, and he named the settlement Jonestown. The first settlers arrived in Guyana in 1974. At first, Jonestown seemed promising. It was a community built on cooperation and equality, with farms, schools, and housing. Followers believed they were building a paradise where they could live out Jim's ideals. By the late 1970s, over 1,000 people were living in Jonestown. But the reality was far from paradise. The jungle was harsh, the work was grueling, and supplies were scarce. Malnutrition and disease were common. In Jonestown, Jim's control over his followers became absolute. He monitored communications, restricted travel, and punished dissent. Loudspeakers broadcast his voice day and night, delivering sermons filled with paranoia and fear. Jim often held white nights, drills where he told followers they were under attack. He would sometimes make them practice drinking poison, calling it an act of loyalty and revolutionary suicide. These drills blurred the line between practice and reality. Back in the US, concerns about the People's Temple were growing. Relatives of members reported that their loved ones were being held against their will. Former members described abuse, manipulation, and threats. In November 1978, Congressman Leo Ryan decided to visit Jonestown to investigate these allegations. He brought a group of journalists, legal aides, and concerned relatives with him. When Ryan and his group arrived, they were greeted warmly at first. Jonestown appeared to be thriving, and residents seemed happy. But this was a facade. Behind the scenes, some residents were desperate to leave. During Ryan's visit, several residents slipped him notes, begging for help to escape. The tension grew as Jim tried to maintain control, realizing his utopia was unraveling. When Ryan and his group prepared to leave with a small group of defectors, Jim's guards ambushed them at a nearby airstrip. Ryan, 3 journalists, and 1 defector were killed in the attack. After the airstrip attack, Jim knew the authorities would come for him. He gathered his followers and told them it was time to enact revolutionary suicide. He claimed that dying together was better than being captured and tortured. Cyanide was mixed into a sweet fruit-flavored drink, and the poison was distributed in large vats. Children were given the poison first, often by their parents. Adults followed, either willingly or by force. By the time authorities arrived, over 900 people, including 304 children, were dead. Bodies were strewn across the settlement in one of the most horrifying scenes imaginable. How did Jim convince so many people to take their own lives? He used fear, manipulation, and a sense of inescapability. Many believed they had no other choice. Jonestown is remembered as a tragic example of the dangers of cults and unchecked power. It serves as a stark reminder of how good intentions can be twisted into something monstrous. If you liked today's story, we hope you'll consider liking and subscribing to our channel. We'd also love to know your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think he started off a good guy and went bad somewhere along the way, or do you think he was evil all along and just did a good job of hiding it? Either way, we really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to spend it with the Graveyard Dance family. Till next time, thanks for watching.